The royal palace of Reunited rose like a dream carved from moonlight and crystal, its towering spires piercing the lavender sky of the planet Veora. Built upon a floating island suspended above a shimmering sea of bioluminescent clouds, the palace pulsed with ancient energy, humming softly beneath the feet of those who walked its translucent corridors. Inside, the air shimmered with the scent of star blossoms, tiny flowers that bloomed only once every 100 years and filled the halls with a fragrance like crushed silver and rain. It was here, in the grand observatory chamber where the ceiling opened to the cosmos, that Princess Lysira stood, her bare feet cool against the glass-like floor. Her skin was the deep violet of twilight over distant mountains, smooth and radiant, and her long hair flowed like liquid moonlight, cascading down her back in waves of pure white. She wore a gown woven from stardust silk, shifting colors with her emotions, now a calm silver, now flickering with hints of soft blue. Her large, almond-shaped eyes, glowing faintly with inner light, scanned the stars as she listened to the quiet report of her science commander. But then, something changed. A scent, faint, almost lost beneath the star blossoms, drifted through the air. It was warm, earthy, tinged with salt and something uniquely organic. It wasn't from Veora. It wasn't from any world in the known systems. And yet, it struck her like a memory buried under centuries. She froze, her breath caught, her fingers, which had been absently tracing a celestial map in the air, stopped mid-gesture. The scent, clean, human, unmistakable, carried with it a flood of images. A crashing ship, fire raining from the sky, the suffocating silence of a dying atmosphere. She remembered the choking smoke, the jagged metal, the way her limbs had refused to move as the gravity field destabilized around her escape pod. She remembered the face. So strange, so soft, with dark eyes wide with fear and determination. A human, a man. He had no weapons, no armor, only a damaged breathing mask and a stubborn will. He had crawled through the wreckage of her pod, pulled her out just as the fuel core began to pulse red. He carried her, staggering, through the burning field, his muscles trembling, his voice hoarse as he muttered words she didn't understand but somehow felt. Hold on. Just hold on. She had lost consciousness in his arms, and when she awoke, she was aboard a Veoran rescue cruiser, healed, safe. But he was gone. No name, no record, just a memory, locked away like a secret star. And now, after 37 solar cycles, that scent had returned. Her heart, three-chambered and built to withstand the low gravity of her homeworld, pounded like a war drum. She turned slowly, her gown whispering against the floor, her eyes scanning the chamber. Servants in silver robes moved quietly. Guards stood at attention, their crystalline armor refracting starlight. And then she saw him. He stood near the archway, slightly apart from the delegation, dressed in a simple, worn flight suit that looked like it had survived 10 wars. His hair was a messy brown, sun-bleached at the edges, and he had a thin scar across his left eyebrow. He was shorter than the Veoran men, broader in the shoulders, and his hands, calloused and strong, were clasped behind his back as he stared up at the open sky, clearly overwhelmed. He hadn't noticed her yet. He was too busy marveling at the twin moons rising through the crystal ceiling, their light painting his face in soft gold and shadow. But she knew. It was him, the human who had pulled her from the fire, the one who had risked everything for a stranger from the stars. Lysira took a step forward, then another. The stardust silk shimmered, turning a deep, pulsing violet, the color of recognition, of awe. The science commander noticed her change and followed her gaze, frowning. "Your Highness," he murmured. "Is something wrong?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat felt tight. Her mind raced. Why is he here? How? Humans were rare visitors to Veora. Their worlds were light years apart, their governments cautious, their histories marked by misunderstandings and brief, tense alliances. For a human to be standing in the Royal Observatory meant something big had happened, something diplomatic, something urgent. But none of that mattered to her in that moment. All that mattered was the man who had once saved her life, now standing in the same room, unaware. She reached him just as he turned. His eyes, warm brown, flecked with green, met hers. For a second, nothing happened. Then a flicker, a pause, a slow, confused frown. I, he stammered, taking a small step back. "Do I know you?" Lysira's voice, usually calm and melodic, came out softer than she intended. You once carried me through fire. His face went still. Then his eyes widened. Wait. That was you? She nodded. You saved me. On the planet Eridon 7. My pod crashed. You were there. You pulled me out. He stared at her, mouth slightly open. Then, to her surprise, he burst out laughing. A deep, rich sound that echoed in the chamber and made several nearby servants jump. No way, he said, shaking his head. No way. I thought you were dead. I carried you for half a mile through burning wreckage, gave you my last oxygen filter, and then the Veoran ships showed up and just took you. I didn't even get a thank you. Lysira blinked. I was unconscious, and when I woke, you were gone. Well, yeah, he said, grinning now. I had to run. My ship was about to blow, and I didn't have time to wait for a medal. I just hoped you made it. I did, she said softly. Because of you. They stood there, staring at each other, the weight of years collapsing into a single moment. Around them, the palace continued its quiet rhythm. But in that space between them, time seemed to pause. The science commander cleared his throat. Princess Lysira, he said carefully. This is Jovan Wren, lead pilot and survival specialist from the Earth Alliance vessel Odyssey. He's part of the new diplomatic exchange team. Jovan gave a half salute, still grinning. At your service, Your Highness. Though I think I already did my service back on Eridon. Lysira couldn't help it. She smiled. It was a rare thing, a true smile, and when she did, her entire face lit up, the violet of her skin deepening, her white hair seeming to glow. The servants whispered. The guards straightened. No one had seen the princess smile like that in decades. You did more than serve, she said. You gave me life. Jovan rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly looking a little embarrassed. Well, I mean, anyone would have done it. No, she said firmly. Not anyone. You did. Before he could respond, a sharp alarm blared through the palace. Red lights pulsed along the walls. The ceiling above them flickered as the observatory's shield activated, sealing shut with a hiss of energy. Lysira's smile vanished, replaced by regal authority. What's happening? She demanded. The science commander activated his wrist display. Intruder alert. A rogue drone, military-grade, unregistered, has breached the lower atmosphere. It's heading straight for the palace. Jovan stepped forward, all humor gone. Can I see the trajectory? The commander hesitated, but Lysira nodded. Jovan studied the data, his eyes narrowing. That's not a drone, he said. It's a stealth probe, designed to infiltrate and gather intel. And it's armed. How do you know? The commander asked. Because I've seen them before, Jovan said grimly. Used to fly missions near the outer rim. That model's banned in 7 systems. Someone's spying on you. Lysira's eyes flashed. On me, possibly. Or on the Alliance talks. Either way, it's not friendly. Another alarm sounded. It's descending fast, the commander said. Shield integrity at 78%. If it fires, it could breach the eastern wing. Lysira turned to her guards. Evacuate the lower chambers. Seal the royal family in the vault. And the probe? One guard asked. We stop it, Jovan said, already moving toward the armory access. Before it gets close enough to fire. Lysira followed. You don't have clearance. I don't need clearance to do what's right, he said, glancing back at her. You taught me that. She froze for a second, then nodded. Then we stop it together. They raced through the palace, the alarms wailing around them. Jovan moved with surprising speed for a man who looked like he'd spent half his life in zero-gravity rehab. Lysira kept pace, her bare feet silent on the glowing floors. They reached the armory, where Jovan suited up in a borrowed Veoran flight harness, lighter than Earth tech, but faster. He strapped on a pulse blaster and a gravity stabilizer. You're not coming, he told Lysira as she reached for a weapon. I am, she said simply, activating her royal insignia. A shimmering energy field formed around her. A personal shield, rare and powerful. That's not a suggestion, he said. That thing's armed. If it fires, you could die, she finished. Yes, but so could hundreds in the lower wings. And you forget. I've survived worse than this. Thanks to you. He looked at her, then sighed. You're as stubborn as you were unconscious. She smiled faintly. And you're as reckless as you were on Eridon. They launched from the skyport in a dual-seater scout craft, the wind howling as they shot into the violet sky. Below, the floating islands glowed like jewels. Above, the twin moons cast long shadows. Jovan piloted, his hands steady, his eyes locked on the radar. There, Lysira said, pointing. A small, dark shape darted through the clouds, moving fast, cloaked in a distortion field. Jovan adjusted course. I'll get close. You disable its core with your energy pulse. But don't get too near. If it explodes, the shockwave could take us both. And if you get too close? She asked. I've got a good track record with explosions, he said with a smirk. She rolled her eyes. Modest too. They closed in. The probe twisted like a serpent, firing a plasma burst that Jovan barely dodged, the craft shuddering as the blast grazed the wing. Shields down to 40%, he shouted. Lysira braced herself. Get me within 10 meters. I can disrupt its frequency. 10 meters is suicide. Then make it 9. He gritted his teeth in dove, the craft spinning through a cloud bank, emerging just behind the probe. Lysira activated her energy pulse, her hands glowing with violet light. She leaned out of the cockpit, the wind tearing at her hair, her gown flapping wildly. Now, she cried. Jovan cut the engines and coasted. Lysira thrust her hands forward, releasing a wave of pure energy. Struck the probe, and for a moment nothing happened. Then crack. The cloaking field shattered. The probe spun wildly, its systems failing. It's destabilizing, Jovan yelled. We need to pull back. But before they could, the probe fired one last shot. Not at them, but at the palace. A high-frequency beam lanced toward the eastern wing, where the royal archives were stored. No! Lysira screamed. Jovan didn't hesitate. He slammed the thrusters, veering the scout craft into the beam's path. The impact was deafening. The craft exploded in a burst of light and force, hurling them both into the sky. Lysira blacked out. When she woke, she was lying on a soft bed in the palace infirmary, the scent of healing moss in the air. Her body ached, but her shield had held. She sat up quickly. Jovan, she gasped. A nurse, a gentle-eyed Veoran woman, placed a calming hand on her shoulder. He's alive. Battered, burned, but alive. The med team pulled him from the wreckage. He saved the eastern wing. The beam hit his craft and scattered. Minimal damage. Lysira closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. Then she stood, ignoring the nurse's protests, and walked barefoot through the quiet halls to the recovery chamber. Inside, Jovan lay on a floating medical bed, his body wrapped in regenerative gel, his face pale but peaceful. A breathing mask covered his mouth, and wires connected him to monitors that beeped steadily. She stepped closer, her heart aching. This man, this reckless, brave, impossible human, had saved her life once, and now he had done it again. Not because of duty, not because of politics, but because it was the right thing to do. She reached out and gently touched his hand. His fingers twitched. Then, slowly, his eyes opened. Hey, he croaked. Did we win? She laughed, tears in her glowing eyes. You always do. He smiled weakly. Must be your good luck. No, she said softly. It's ours. Over the next days, the palace buzzed with news. The rogue probe was traced to a faction of rogue mercenaries from the Orion Belt, known for selling secrets to the highest bidder. The Earth Alliance launched an investigation. Diplomatic talks were delayed, but strengthened. Both sides now aware of the threats lurking in the shadows. And Jovan? He recovered faster than anyone expected. The Veoran healing tech worked wonders, and his stubborn human body refused to stay down. He walked the gardens with Lysira, leaning on a cane at first, then tossing it aside with a grin. You know, he said one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the cloud sea, I never thought I'd come back to a place like this, let alone meet the person I saved. And I never thought I'd see you again, she said. I searched, after I recovered. I asked every Earth vessel that passed through. No one knew your name, no records, just a story. He chuckled. Probably because I wasn't supposed to be on Eridon 7. Wasn't on any mission. I was running. Running. From my past, he admitted. From a failed mission. From guilt. I was a pilot for a private exploration team. We lost a ship. Lost good people. I blamed myself. So I left. Flew solo for years. Ended up on Eridon by accident. And then, you crashed. She looked at him. And you saved me anyway. Yeah, he said quietly. Guess some things are stronger than guilt. She reached for his hand. Like fate. He didn't pull away. As the days passed, something shifted between them. It wasn't sudden. It grew like the star blossoms. Slow, quiet, inevitable. They walked together. They talked about Earth, about Veora, about stars and storms and the silence between worlds. He made her laugh with terrible human jokes. She taught him how to read the constellations of her people. He showed her how to whistle, something Veorans couldn't do. She tried, and failed, and laughed so hard she nearly fell off the bench. But beneath the laughter, there was depth. A bond forming, not from duty, but from memory, from courage, from the unspoken understanding that they had both been lost, and had found each other in the dark. One night, as they stood beneath the open sky, watching a meteor shower paint the heavens, Jovan turned to her. "You know," he said, "most princesses wouldn't be caught dead with a scruffy pilot who smells like engine grease and bad decisions. And most pilots wouldn't risk their lives twice for a purple-skinned alien they barely know," she countered. "Touché." They stood in silence for a while. Then he said, "I don't want to leave." Her breath caught. "You don't have to. The alliance talks will end. My ship will go back to Earth. And you could stay," she said softly, "as a liaison, as a friend." He looked at her, really looked at her. "Is that what we are? Friends?" She didn't answer with words. Instead, she stepped closer, her white hair catching the starlight, her violet skin glowing faintly. She placed a hand on his chest, over his heart. "You carry mine," she said, "and I think you've had a piece of yours with me all along." He exhaled, long and slow. Then he smiled, the same reckless, warm smile she remembered from the fire. "Well," he said, "guess I'm staying." And as the meteors fell like silver rain above them, the princess and the pilot stood together, two souls from different worlds, bound not by blood or title, but by something far stronger, the quiet, unbreakable thread of a promise made in silence, in smoke, in stars. And though the future held dangers, politics, and unknown threats, one thing was certain. They would face it not as strangers, but as something more, something rare, something real. The days that followed were unlike any in the long history of the royal palace of Reunited. The air itself seemed to hum with a new energy, not just from the repaired shields or the heightened security, but from the quiet presence of a human who no longer walked its halls like a guest, but like someone who belonged. Jovan Wren, the scruffy, quick-witted pilot from Earth, had become something more than a diplomatic liaison. He was now a fixture, seen strolling the crystal gardens at dawn, laughing with the kitchen staff over bowls of sweet cloud nectar, or teaching young Veoran cadets how to play a strange Earth game called rock, paper, scissors, which they insisted was magic, because how else could paper defeat rock? And always he was with her. Lysira found herself seeking him without thinking, turning a corner in the palace expecting to see him leaning against a pillar, arms crossed, grinning like he'd just pulled off a prank. She began leaving her meditation chambers earlier just to catch a glimpse of him on the eastern balcony, where he liked to watch the twin moons rise. He never asked for anything, never demanded titles or privileges, but the palace, in its own quiet way, began to reshape itself around him. A human-sized chair appeared in the council chamber. A small room near the observatory was converted into a study, filled with borrowed Earth books, a working coffee machine, which exploded twice before the engineers figured it out, and a hammock strung between two support beams because, as Jovan put it, no self-respecting pilot meditates upright. But it wasn't just comfort that grew between them. It was something deeper, quieter, more powerful. It bloomed in the silences, the way their eyes met across a crowded room and the world seemed to pause. The way he'd instinctively reach for her hand when alarm sounded, not out of fear, but protection. The way she would rest her head against his shoulder during long strategy meetings, her white hair brushing his neck, and he'd stop talking mid-sentence, suddenly aware of how still everything had become. One evening, as the sky turned the deep purple of a fading bruise, they stood together on the highest terrace of the palace, where the wind carried the scent of distant storms. Below, the floating islands glowed like embers in the cloud sea. Jovan leaned on the railing, arms crossed, watching the stars blink to life. "You ever miss Earth?" Lysira asked softly. He was quiet for a long moment. "Yeah," he said. "Sometimes. The smell of rain on soil, the sound of birds, the way the sun feels on your skin, not filtered through a dome or a shield. But I miss it less now." She turned to him. "Why?" He looked at her, his brown-green eyes serious. "Because I found something I didn't know I was looking for," She smiled, but there was sadness in it. You can't stay here forever, Jovan. My people, our lifespans are longer than yours. The court will expect me to bond with a Veoran. There are traditions, duties. He nodded slowly. I know. And yet, she said, stepping closer. When you're near, the stars feel brighter. When you speak, the silence between words means more. When you laugh, even the palace feels alive. I don't understand it. I don't know what this is, but I don't want to lose it. Jovan reached up, gently brushing a strand of her moonlight hair from her face. His touch was warm, calloused, real. You won't, he said. I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to. She looked at him, her glowing eyes searching his. What if I never do? Then I'll stay, he said simply. Even when my hair turns gray. Even when I need a cane to walk these crystal halls. Even when I can't whistle anymore. I'll stay. Tears, rare for a Veoran princess, glistened in her eyes. You say the strangest things in the most beautiful way. He grinned. Must be the earth charm. She laughed, then suddenly pulled him into a tight embrace. He froze for a second. Veorans were not a touch-heavy people, and public affection was almost unheard of. Then wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. Around them, the palace lights shimmered, reacting to her emotional frequency. The stardust silk of her gown flared into radiant gold, a color not seen in centuries, reserved only for moments of profound connection. Inside the palace, servants paused. Guards exchanged glances. The science commander nearly dropped his data tablet. The princess, one whispered. She's golden. And in that moment, the unspoken truth settled over the palace like a new law of nature. She had chosen, not a prince, not a noble, but a human who had once pulled her from fire. But the universe, as it often does, refused to let peace last. 3 nights later, a transmission arrived, encrypted, urgent, sent through a black channel frequency. Jovan received it on a private Earth band, one only high-level Alliance operatives knew. He read it alone in his study, the coffee machine humming in the corner. When Lysira found him, his face was pale. What is it? She asked. He handed her the translated message. It was brief. Ren Orion mercenaries have taken the Odyssey. Crew alive, but held in the derelict belt. They're demanding you in exchange. Do not respond. We're moving in. But if you go, it's suicide. Commander Vey. Lysira's hands trembled. You can't go. I have to, he said quietly. They're my crew. I left them once. I won't do it again. They'll kill you. Maybe, he said. But if I don't try, I'm already dead. She stepped forward, gripping his arms. Then I'm coming with you. No, he said firmly. It's too dangerous. These aren't diplomats. They're killers. They'll use you to get to me. And if they hurt you, she whispered, I will burn their world to ash. He stared at her, then pulled her into a fierce kiss. Sudden, deep, full of everything they hadn't said. When it ended, they were both breathless. You're impossible, he murmured. So are you, she said. Which means we're perfect. He laughed, then grew serious. Wait for my signal. If I don't send it in 7 cycles, don't come. Promise me. She didn't answer. Lysira, promise me. After a long silence, she nodded. For 7 cycles. It wasn't enough. They both knew it. Jovan left at dawn, slipping away in a stolen scout ship before the palace guards could stop him. Lysira watched from the terrace, her heart a stone in her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply turned, walked to the royal armory, and activated the ancient code of the Blood Guard. A warrior order thought extinct for centuries. The palace trembled. Energy surged through the spires. And from the vaults beneath the island, weapons awakened. She would wait 6 cycles. Then she would fly. Jovan's journey to the derelict belt was a nightmare of silent void and drifting wreckage. The belt was a graveyard of forgotten ships, orbiting a dead star, where gravity twisted and time bent. His ship, stripped of signals, crept through the debris like a ghost. When he reached the coordinates, he found the Odyssey. His old ship, docked to a massive mercenary cruiser, its hull scarred with battle marks, its name painted in jagged red. The Maw. He docked quietly using an old smuggling hatch. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the smell of stale sweat. He moved like a shadow, using every trick he'd learned in his years as a rogue pilot. He found the crew locked in the lower hold, 10 of them bruised but alive. When they saw him, their eyes widened. "Captain?" one whispered. "Not anymore," Jovan said, cutting their restraints. "But I'm still crazy enough to get us out." They moved fast, but not fast enough. Alarms blared. Heavy boots pounded the metal floors. Jovan barely made it to the escape pod with 3 of them before the mercenaries cornered the rest. He sealed the pod, launched it toward a nearby asteroid cluster, safe, he hoped, then turned back. He couldn't leave the others. Alone, he fought his way through the ship, using a stolen pulse blade and sheer desperation. He freed 2 more crew members, but the rest were captured and dragged to the command deck. There, on a view screen, he saw her, Lysira. She stood on the bridge of a Veoran warship, her white hair flowing, her gown now replaced by armor of living crystal. Behind her, an entire fleet shimmered into view, ships of the Royal Starguard, faster and deadlier than anything in the Alliance. "Release them," she said, her voice echoing through the ship, "or I will reduce your vessel to atoms." The mercenary leader, a hulking figure with cybernetic eyes, laughed. "The princess herself? Come to save your pet human? How touching." "You have 1 minute," she said coldly. "Then I open fire." Jovan didn't wait. He triggered the ship's emergency overload, a failsafe he'd installed years ago. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. The gravity failed. In the chaos, he freed the last of his crew and dragged them to an escape hatch. As he launched, he saw the maw consumed in a storm of violet energy. Lysira's fleet firing in perfect unison. The ship shattered like glass. He floated in the pod, watching the destruction, his heart pounding. Then a voice crackled over the comm. "Jovan Wren," Lysira said, her voice tight. "If you ever leave without telling me again, I will personally throw you into a black hole." He laughed. A broken, joyful sound. "Noted, Your Highness." "Don't Your Highness me," she said. "You're grounded. For life. Best punishment ever." When the rescue ship reached him, she was the first to open the hatch. She pulled him into her arms, holding him so tightly he thought his ribs might crack. He didn't care. "I told you to wait," he whispered. "I did," she said. "6 cycles. You're impossible. And you're mine." And in that moment, surrounded by stars and wreckage, with their fleets glowing in the distance, they kissed. Not as princess and pilot, not as alien and human, but as 2 souls who had crossed fire, silence, and space to find each other. And the universe, for once, held its breath. The war with the Orion mercenaries did not end that night, but it began to unravel. The destruction of the maw sent shockwaves through the criminal syndicates of the outer systems. The image of the purple-skinned Veoran princess leading a fleet of crystal warships into battle became legend overnight, whispered in smuggler dens, studied in military academies, and even broadcast on Earth's deep space news channels under the headline, "Alien Princess Saves Human Crew in Daring Raid." Jovan Wren, once a forgotten pilot with a dishonorable discharge, was reinstated with full honors by the Earth Alliance and offered a command position. He declined. "I found my mission," he said at the diplomatic summit held in the Grand Hall of Reunited Palace. "Right here." Lysira stood beside him, radiant in a gown of living starlight silk, her white hair woven with silver threads that shimmered like constellations. The entire royal court watched in stunned silence as the human, who had once been an uninvited guest, stepped forward and knelt not in submission, but in devotion. "Lysira of Veora," Jovan said, his voice steady. "I didn't believe in fate when I pulled you from that wreckage. I thought I was just doing the right thing. But now I know it wasn't chance. It was the universe giving me a second chance at life, so I could find you." From his pocket, he pulled not a ring, but a small, glowing shard. A piece of the escape pod that had crashed on Eridon 7, fused with stardust and preserved in crystalline resin. "This is where it started, and I want it to be where our forever begins. Will you bond with me? Not as princess and pilot, not as alien and human, but as us." Tears, real, shimmering, luminous, fell from Lysira's eyes, tracing glowing paths down her violet cheeks. The palace fell utterly silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then, in a voice that carried through the hall like a song of the stars, she said, "I have waited across lifetimes for you, Jovan Wren, and I will wait no longer." She reached down, took his hand, and pulled him to his feet. And before the gathered dignitaries of Earth and Veora, she kissed him. A kiss that made the palace lights flare gold once more, that sent ripples through the energy fields, that caused the ancient stargates to hum in harmony. The bonding ceremony was held beneath the open sky, on the floating meadow where the star blossoms had bloomed for the first time in centuries. Drawn, the elders said, by the strength of a love that defied worlds. Veoran tradition required no vows spoken aloud, for the bond was sealed through a ritual of light and memory. Two souls sharing their deepest moments in a stream of glowing energy that arced between their hands. But Jovan, ever the rebel, added his own touch. He stood before the celestial altar, dressed in a fusion of earth and Veoran attire, a jacket of black flight leather lined with silver star weave, his boots scuffed but proud. And when it was his turn, he didn't just share memories. He spoke them. "I remember the smoke," he began, his voice echoing across the meadow. "The fire, the moment I saw you, unconscious, glowing like a fallen star. I didn't know your name, I didn't know your world, but I knew, in my bones, that I had to save you. And when I carried you through that burning field, I wasn't just saving a life. I was saving my own." Lysira closed her eyes, tears flowing freely as the memory stream played above them. Jovan crawling through wreckage, her limp body in his arms, the sky burning red. "And I remember," he continued, "the first time you smiled at me in this palace, the way the light changed, the way my heart stopped. I knew then that I wasn't just staying for duty. I was staying for you, for this, for us." When Lysira shared her memories, the sky itself seemed to weep light. She showed her people the crash, the fear, the moment she woke in a Veoran medbay and asked, "Where is the human?" She showed them Jovan teaching her to whistle, failing, laughing. Jovan standing between her and danger. Jovan whispering, "I'm not going anywhere." And finally, Jovan kissing her on the terrace as meteors fell like silver rain. When the ritual ended, the star blossoms burst into full bloom all at once, their petals floating upward like 1,000 tiny stars. The elders gasped. Such a thing had never happened in recorded history. It was a sign, the universe itself blessing the union. They were married not by law but by love, not by politics but by choice. And though some in the royal court grumbled, old nobles who believed purity of bloodline was sacred, the people of Veora embraced Jovan as their own. Children drew pictures of the Earth hero. Poets wrote ballads of the star-crossed bond. And in every home, a new saying spread, "Love does not ask where you are from. It only asks that you arrive." Years passed. The palace grew louder, fuller, alive in a way it hadn't been in centuries. Where once silence reigned in the royal wings, now laughter echoed through the halls. Small feet pattered across crystal floors. Tiny voices, some with violet skin and white hair, others with brown curls and earth-tan skin, called out for Papa and Mama in a mix of Veoran and broken English. Jovan and Lysira had many children. More than anyone expected, more than the royal genealogists could keep track of. First came twins, a boy and a girl, one with Lysira's glowing eyes and Jovan's mischievous grin, the other with Jovan's stubborn jaw and Lysira's radiant hair. Then triplets, 2 girls and a boy, each born under a different moon phase, each with a unique blend of human and Veoran traits. Then more, and more. By the time a decade had passed, the royal nursery was overflowing, and Jovan had converted the old war strategy room into a playchamber filled with earth toys, Veoran gravity balls, and a giant hammock where he'd nap while 5 children climbed on him like a jungle gym. "You're outnumbered," Lysira would say, laughing as she pulled a toddler off his chest. "Best mission ever," he'd reply, kissing the child's forehead. They raised their children with stories of the crash on Eridon 7, of the rogue probe, of the battle in the derelict belt. They taught them both Earth games and Veoran meditation, how to whistle and how to sing the song of the stars. The children grew strong,